Hey, Mark. Snow? Is it snowing?
Hello.
Snowing in Denmark as well?
It was snowing, but it was the first snow of the year. I mean, I think we are probably going to be the most southern of all of us, so it's in Nordic standards somewhat pathetic, right?
Yeah, that is true. You have all those big, high, tall mountains that you have snow on.
I'm sitting on the first floor right now, and I think it's almost too high for me.
Just double check again over there. Now it smells like pizza here in Norway. Pizza and beer or sodas, whatever. So I'm going to share my screen then obviously in here for everyone, but also just quickly go to share my screen. Before we start, this is the, we did one Scandinavian tug some years ago. We did one Nordic tug even less years ago, and now we're doing this Nordic one again, where we have managed to get one speaker from each of the Nordic countries, even though there are not only, but in Finland, Stockholm, and Oslo, we have user groups. In Norway, we meet up once every quarter. So, as always, urging people to sign up to speak at these events. Then just the Norway ones, we don't need to speak in English, but then we have Norwegian presenters. And then from Denmark, we're still working on trying to get up a user group up and running there. So I'm trying to help some people to do that. That would be fun. So the agenda today, these are the beautiful speakers from the Nordics, and then Chantilly from US that I met last week. Same as these two guys that are just popping in here that were at DataFam Europe. That was a fun event. And the agenda will start with design secrets for a non-designer. We'll move on to Denmark, go to Finland, to Iceland, Norway, and then end up in Sweden. And not because Norway is better than Sweden, right? It's just natural selection of countries. And then we're going to do a wrap up in the end. And for those of you who are in Oslo, we go outside to a nearby pub for those who wants to, and going to finish up the budget of the year. And in Finland, you probably are going to have some fun as well, Alina. And for the rest of you who are probably sitting at home or at the office, you can do whatever you want. So I'm going to stop sharing. I managed to click that button. I have two screens. That's the challenge. And we have people from Pennsylvania, from Espoo, Sweden, Denmark, Stockholm, Nesodden. That's exciting. That's here in Norway, New York, Tampere, Switzerland even. Hello, Switzerland. So then I'm going to switch over to Chantilly, which if I'm it's open for you there. So I'm going to share the screen over here. She's a visionary, Hall of Fame visionary as well. Isn't that correct?
Yes.
Yes, that means that you've been a visionary for more than 5 years.
Yep.
So now you just have to relax, enjoy, and learn how to be for a non-designer that many of us are. All these design secrets. So I'm gonna move this over so we can see. Close the chat, and over to you.
Alrighty, so let me go back. I am Chantilly Jagannath. Today I'll be presenting on design secrets for a non-designer. I'm currently the CEO and founder of Millennials in Data, a nonprofit organization that I started 5 years ago to help millennials get adapted to the workplace, regardless of like what their major is and how they can understand data in their respective workplaces. And I like to title this presentation the business edition, because I've done this presentation several years ago and I centered it around like how you can use design secrets within your own personal dashboards, but I found that you could bring tips and tricks within your business dashboards as well. So I like to start by saying I personally do not consider myself a designer, and here's why. I started using Tableau about 14 years ago, and these were the very first charts that I made. I was a student at Howard University here, majoring in information systems, and the professor just gave us a data set and said, make sense of this data. And I didn't know how to make sense of data at that time with any other tool outside of Excel. But this data set was just way too massive to even be opened in Excel. So I had to find a tool that could help me analyze that data. And lo and behold, I ended up running into Tableau that night. I actually presented this to the class the next day. I found that Tableau was really intuitive to help me get started. It was free for students, which I definitely needed. But as you can see, I didn't even take off the sheet 4 header there. But I was just so intrigued by the tool. And at the same time, I was working for Johnson & Johnson as a contractor, and they were looking for a Tableau SME. I was really intrigued by Tableau, and I just decided to get all of the experience that I needed with Johnson & Johnson and Tableau. So I started helping the organization transition their legacy reporting into Tableau. And over the years, I picked up a lot of tips and tricks and things that you could do to make your dashboard, go from these very basic visualizations to more visually appealing visualizations like the ones that you see here. So today we're going to talk about how do you go from your left-hand charts, your out-of-the-box Tableau charts, to more compelling visualizations for your end users. And I like to summarize it with 5 design secrets. So how do we gather requirements effectively from our end users? How do we create a template? How do we use icons and art to our advantage? How do we choose colors that matter? And then we'll talk about fonts and how we can simplify fonts. So gathering requirements. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure you understand the overall goal of the project that your end user presents to you. You want to make sure you have a clear understanding of exactly what they're looking to get out of this dashboard. When you're going through your requirements gathering with your end user, you want to determine who will be using this dashboard. So who are your stakeholders, and have an understanding of their analytical maturity. So what tool are they currently viewing reports in? Do they look at things in PDF or PowerPoint? How are they getting that information? Is it emailed to them? Are they even familiar with Tableau or any other reporting tool? So you want to understand that pretty early on so that you understand the complexity of what you can build into your Tableau dashboard. And you want to understand their preferences. So what colors are they looking to incorporate? What logos? What size? It's always great to ask for a style guide from your end users to get an understanding of the things that you need to build in from a brand perspective. Also, it's really good to understand how they would like to view this information for their, what's their preference. Would they like to see it on a mobile device, a tablet device, or a standard, desktop screen? Are they comfortable scrolling vertically and horizontally, or do they want everything fit automatically into the screen size? All of that goes into understanding your end user's preferences. While gathering their requirements, you want to make sure that prioritizing their business questions. Come to you with a bunch of different questions or a bunch of things that they want their dashboard to answer, and it's up to you as the developer to help refine that and prioritize that based off of the business needs. Once you have those requirements and those business questions, you want to go ahead and complete a high-level data discovery. So understanding the data, where it's located, how we're going to go about accessing that data. Do we need to bring in data engineers, possibly build like a data warehouse or build like more structure on the back end for us before we bring that information into Tableau? And then last but not least, I like to understand the questions or the views that are going to be needed in order to answer the questions. So with this, you're having a conversation with your end user and you're just asking them, how do you typically view this information? Do you view it as a text table? Do you view it as a bar chart? And understand exactly what they're comfortable with and what visualizations they're most comfortable seeing for their requirements. To bring all of that information together, I've created a dashboard requirements document that pretty much just outlines everything that you need to have in order to develop the dashboard. So on the left, we have the dashboard overview, the audience and who will be using it, the different display modes, the use case for it, whether it's a web, a PDF, a PowerPoint, or an image, and then any additional filters and notes that we need to incorporate. And then in terms of the requirements on the right-hand side, this is a view requirement for a specific worksheet that you will have to view for or build for your end users, right? So what dimensions are we going to need in order to construct this view? What measures are we going to use? Do we have to calculate anything? If so, how do we go about calculating it? Should we format this a certain way? What filters do we need to incorporate? Where's the data located? And then any additional notes in terms of like the chart types that we need to keep in mind. So let's look at this in action so you can see exactly like how we'll go about using this particular dashboard requirements document. So we have a goal for a new dashboard. This VP is looking for an interactive dashboard that keeps track of the company sales data, and she wants to share it with the regional leads as well. So with this dashboard, we want to know which subcategories have the highest sales, what are the sales per region over time, what are the sales profit and profit ratio for each region, what are the sales per state, and which segment and region have the highest sales. So here on the left-hand side, I've taken that information that the VP provided us, and I've created the overview of the dashboard. Then on the right-hand side, I've taken just one of those requirements and I've detailed out exactly everything it's going to need in order to build that worksheet. So when we look at the metric details per region, we're going to need the region field. We're going to need customers, orders, sales, profit, and profit ratio. We know that in order to calculate customers, orders, and profit, we know exactly how we're going to need to calculate it. Count distinct of customer ID, count distinct of order ID, profit divided by sales. No formatting, no filters. We've noted the data source, and then the additional notes, we've noted that the VP would like to see this as a text table. Then you would do that for all of your requirements, and that'll give you about 7 different sheets that now tell you exactly how to go about building this dashboard. So once you have your requirements, I always say it's best to go and create a template, not to go into Tableau and start pulling data in and just creating things based off those requirements, but go ahead and create a template that could provide your end user with an outline of exactly what this dashboard could potentially look like. So when creating your template, the first thing you want to do is you want to prioritize your requirements. So have a conversation with your end user and organize your requirements from the most important to the least important, because that's exactly how you want to lay out your dashboard. Your most important information will be in your top left corner, and your least important information will be in your bottom right-hand corner. You can create templates using simply a dashboard in Tableau, but incorporate blank text boxes. You could even use pen or paper to just outline this. I'll even go into some of the tools that I use. I like to use sketch tools like Balsamiq and even Figma to show my end user what this dashboard could potentially look like without having to incorporate that data. So building out this template will help you speed up your development process if you get it right. As you're building your template, make sure that you're designing to a grid. Users consume information the best in a grid-like format. So if you think about like a newspaper or a magazine, all of that information is in a column in a grid-like format. So also keep that in mind when you're building out your dashboards and your templates. For your templates, try to incorporate bands and add some context to them. A band is simply a number or a big angry number that you'll place at the top of your dashboard that will summarize some of the high-level metrics that are being displayed in your dashboard. As you're building your template, use size and position to show hierarchy. As I mentioned before, users are going to look at your dashboard top to bottom, left to right. So you want to use your dashboard layout to show that same hierarchy. Most important information will be in your top left, least important information will be in your bottom right. And start to think about icons and the use of color as you build your template as well. So where can we incorporate icons to add a pop of flair to our dashboard? And we'll talk more about icons in a few. And how are we going to color it, right? Start to bring your template to life if you're building like a Balsamiq or Figma wireframe, just so that you can show your end user exactly what this dashboard would potentially look like. So here are the tools I use to create templates. We have Tableau, Balsamiq, Figma, and then NinjaMock is another tool. I personally don't use it, but I heard it's another great design tool. Here's your example of your Tableau wireframe. So we're simply just creating a dashboard in Tableau. We have blank text boxes. We're adding some labels to it to show the user exactly how much space that potential requirement is going to take up on the dashboard and the chart type that's going to be associated with it. We're simply just putting a border around it so that they can see exactly how much space it will take up. We're adding some section headers, showing them where icons could potentially be in logos as well. Now when you have your balsamic wireframe, it's still a black and white, or we call it low fidelity wireframe, but it has a little bit more context to it. You can kind of get an outline of the types of charts that are going to be there. You can visually see that. You can visually see the drop down for the filters that will be there. You can get all of that information within your balsamic wireframe. What you don't get is that pop of color or having the wireframe look like an actual dashboard. But that's what you can get with the Figma wireframe. So your Figma wireframe looks exactly like, your end result, but it has no data associated with it. It's all just mock numbers in there. You're adding color, you're adding all of those visual elements. So now your end users get an actual feel for what your visualization will look like. And once you have your template, go ahead and fill in your template. So here is us filling in the Tableau template where we have the wireframe on the left-hand side. We built out all of our charts on the right-hand side, and we simply just had to place them into the dashboard. Here's another example of a Tableau template. Here's an example of a balsamic template where we're taking that sketch, we're creating all the worksheets in Tableau, and we're laying it out exactly as we see it in that wireframe. Another example of a balsamic wireframe. And then here are some Figma wireframes. Not only can you use your Figma wireframe to display exactly what the front end of it will look like, you could also use it for like those modern dashboards. I have users that always say, hey, we want rounded corners, we want a more visual appeal. Figma is great at allowing you to create the background of what your dashboard will look like and then laying your visualization on top of it within Tableau. So here's an example of taking that Figma wireframe and transitioning it into a Tableau one. Same thing here. And reuse your template. If you have a really good template, you can use it as a style guide within your organization. So here's an example of the same template being used for an HR use case as well as use case. So layout, fill in, and reuse. Let's talk about using R to your advantage. Using simple images and icons can take your dashboard from basic to visually appealing. The first thing you want to do is you want to make sure that you select icons that communicate meaning and are easy to recognize. So here we have a home icon, an info icon, and a data source icon. These are things that already resonate with your end users. You don't have to explain to them what these icons mean. Next, you want to provide labels or add context for any icon that your end user has that interaction with. So if you want them to return to the home page, either have a hover over in that area or simply just state, click on the home icon to return to the home page, hover for more dashboard information, hover to view information on the data source. Never assume that your end user is going to know how to interact with an icon or anything that you have on your dashboard. Be very explicit and let them know how to do that. Simple is okay when you're selecting icons. You don't want anything too creative, right? So you just want a regular house. Your house doesn't have to have 2 stories, windows, doors, like none of that. Like it's okay to just have a simple icon because the smaller those icons are, the harder it is to see them. Make sure when you have more than one dashboard, more than one icon on your dashboard, you have consistent and cohesive icons. So what we mean by that is if you're using all solid icons, or if you have a solid icon on your dashboard, make sure all of them are solid icons. If you have silhouette icons, make sure that all of them are silhouette icons. Never have a mix of silhouette and solid icons in the same dashboard real estate area. If your dashboard has different real estate areas, then it might be okay, but you definitely want to make sure that all of your icons follow the same style. Make sure they use the same dashboard theme and color scheme. If your dashboard is purple and gray, make sure your icons are either purple or gray. Don't have blue, red, green icons on your dashboard just because. And last but not least, also reduce the icon graphic details associated with your icon. So this means you don't want to have too many lines or curves on your icons. You don't want to have things with too much context because those icons and those lines and curves will start to be blurry and really hard to see for your end user. So try to stick to some really simple icons if you can. So here's an example of using icons in business dashboard. So here we have green icons that we're using at the top of this dashboard. The reason I felt okay with using green icons is because the logo is present on the dashboard, which is both green and blue. If that logo wasn't there, then I probably would not use the green icons, but this is an example of using different colored icons than your overall dashboard in your view. Here's another example of using icons. Here you see all of the icons that are within the band area. They all have that circle behind them. So we're making sure they all have like that consistent and cohesive style. Here we have icons within different real estate areas. We have the panel on the left-hand side. All of those are silhouette icons. We have the filter section up top. All of those icons are solid icons. And then our band areas, that real estate area, all of those are solid icons. So this is just an example of mixing different styled icons. But as you can see here, we have different real estate areas on the dashboard. So just make sure your icons are consistent within the same real estate area. Another example of a marketing dashboard using icons. And here's an example of what you do not want to do with icons. So in our band area, we're using all silhouette icons except for this one more icon. And as you can see, it sticks out like a sore thumb. So this is what you want to avoid with your icons. Try to stick to all of them having the same look and feel. And those are your icon and art guidelines. I personally like to get my icons from icon.com or the Noun Project. With flaticon.com, you can change the color scheme of your icons for free if you sign up for a free account. So you can change your icon colors to match whatever colors you have on your dashboard without having to try to find like specific colors already for those icons. Let's talk about choosing colors that matter. So first, when you're selecting colors for your dashboard, you want to make sure that you let the brand color form the basis of the dashboard. So what this means is you want to make sure that your headers, your titles, your icons, all of those are your brand colors. You want to pick one dominant color from your brand guide, brand style guide, and you want to use that, for the basis of your dashboard. If you're stuck on how to color your dashboard, it's okay to get inspiration from other art and visualizations that are out here. I love scrolling through the Tableau public gallery because there are a ton of dashboards there that can inspire you and show you how to color, how to lay things out. So never be afraid to be inspired and just make sure you're always giving credit where credit is due if you are inspired by someone's dashboard. Limit the number of dominant colors on your dashboard to no more than 2. So I always say if anything is like a bold color, it's not like white or gray or any like a really light color, then it's considered a dominant color. And you don't want to have too many of those on your dashboard. So try to limit the use of dominant color to 2. Create accessible color schemes and test them. So never assume that your end users can see the dashboard the same way that you can. So if you have different shadings on your dashboard and you're using color to highlight, the highs and lows of things, run that dashboard through a color blindness simulator so that you can see exactly how your end users would potentially see that dashboard. Use color purposefully and for reinforcement. So this means being very strategic with your coloring. So ask yourself for every single chart, every single worksheet that you develop, what do I want to draw my end users' attention to? If the answer is nothing, then don't add a dominant color to it. Simply use like a gray color. But if you're saying, hey, I want them to see the maximum value of this or the minimum value of this, then that's what you're going to color. I want to highlight the spark point or the last value or the beginning value. That's what you're going to add context to, and you add some color to that. And then last but not least, I always say design and grayscale first and then use color to highlight. And this goes back to using color purposefully. Believe it or not, all of my dashboards are built in grayscale first. And then I use a hint of color on all of my worksheets once I ask myself that question, what do I want to draw the end user's eye to? So here's an example of getting inspiration from art and other visualizations. I like to scroll through Pinterest business dashboards, and I think there's another website called Dribble out there, and see other mock-ups that people have created, and I like to get inspiration from them. So on the left-hand side, this is the visualization that inspired me, and on the right-hand side, this was the visualization that I actually created. Here's another example of using color purposefully and for reinforcement. As you can see here, we're using color to distinguish on the left-hand side between two different investments. So we're keeping those colors consistent throughout. Then on the right-hand side, we're using color just to highlight the maximum value for each of the sections on the dashboard. Here's an example of using color purposefully and for reinforcement. So as I mentioned, I design everything in grayscale first, and then I pick one or two dominant colors and I add that to my visualization. So here, just coloring each of the maximum values, coloring the spark point, and then highlighting patients that are over 300, days that are over 300 patients for this hospital dashboard. And same thing on the right-hand side, using that orange to kind of draw attention to the items on the dashboard that I want the user's eye to catch. And here's an example of creating accessible color schemes and testing them. So on the dashboard on the left-hand side, I wanted to make sure that all of the areas of red the end user could see. So I took this dashboard and I placed it in a color blindness simulator. And as you can see, even though it changes the color for like red weak and red blind and green weak and green blind, the end user is still able to depict the highlights because I'm using a neutral white color for everything else on the dashboard. And here's an example of what you do not want to do with your dashboard. So using that green and red color scheme is really hard to see. So you probably want to stay away from that because for individuals who might have a color blindness deficiency, they're not going to be able to tell between those two different shades. So now let's talk about uncomplicating fonts. So the first thing we want to do when we're selecting a font is we just want to pick one legible font. And we want to have that for the entire dashboard. Don't have a dashboard that has different font styles. So if it's Arial or Times New Roman, make sure everything is either one of those fonts. Like just make sure that your dashboard only uses one font style. Next, you want to have no more than 4 sizes of that font type. So I like to say the dashboard titles, if you have multiple dashboards in your workbook, should all have the same size. All of your worksheet titles should all have the same size. All of your headers should have the same size. And then all of your mark labels should have the same size for every single worksheet and for every single dashboard. You want to avoid custom fonts if possible because these will not render well if you have Tableau Cloud or if you're using Tableau Public. Reason being is because there's only a certain amount of fonts that are available on those servers. So you just want to avoid any custom fonts that you might download from the internet and try to use that in the desktop, but it's going to render different once you go and publish it. You want to be strategic with your fonts and your colors. Reason being is because your end user may not be able to depict a dark colored font on a dark colored background. So there are some issues with contrast accessibility if you're using like a light font on a light background or a dark font on a dark background. So I'm going to show you another tool that you can use to always test this out to make sure that your end user can see the contrast between your font and your background. Use color to bold or emphasize any text that you want to draw your end user's attention to. So this means that if you are comparing two values within your dashboard, right, use color to depict those two values in text, and then use those same two colors in your visualization. And also stay away from center alignment or right alignment because it's hard for your end users to see that information. They're going to have to look at where each of the lines begins and ends. So always try to align left if you're creating like paragraph board. So here's the tool that I use to test the font and the background colors, accessiblecolors.com. You can plug in your text color, your background color, and you want to make sure that it is AA compliant. What I like about this tool is that if it does fail, it will give you a new background color and a new text color that you can change your dashboard to make sure that it is compliant. So here's an example. I have this mustard yellow on this dark blue background, and I wanted to make sure that there was enough contrast between it. Plugged it into accessible colors, and it did pass. But here's an example of if I were to use like a darker mustard yellow, how it would not pass, and how the tool provided me with 2 new options, either for the background or the font itself. Blues and grays are some of the hardest colors to see. So if you're using a blue on top of gray, definitely make sure you're testing this. As you can see, it passed here. But if I were to use like a lighter gray background, it would not have passed. So in summary, Start with your audience and their requirements, build your template and add your views, incorporate design elements that will enhance your story, and add color strategically, icons for charm, and use the rule of 4 when selecting fonts. And remember, anyone can be a designer. It's not something you're born with. It's not something exclusive to a select few. All it takes is practice while keeping a few design secrets in mind. And with that, that concludes my presentation. I'll open it up for any questions that we have.
Spørsmål fra salen? Thank you. There's always a lot of these things that you think about and forget, so it's always nice to be reminded as well. Do we have anything in the Q&A? Helena, do you see anything in there?
No.
There's some thank you in there, in the chat at least. Nothing in the Q&A, so everything apparently was crystal clear, which is good. If you don't have any final comments, then thank you for enlightening us non-designers.
Awesome.
I'm going to check everybody in the room
in
a couple of weeks to see if they have followed your tips or not. Thank you. Then we're heading over to Denmark.
Yes.
I saw that you were paying attention and you needed to rewrite your entire demo or presentation now with all the tips that we already got. So hopefully you're ready to go.
5 more minutes down there.
Yeah.
All right. I will try to share my screen and then let's see how it goes. All right. Hopefully you can see my screen. Great. Then I'll kick it off. So for the next 20 or so minutes, I will talk about visualizing soft values, and I'll present a small project that I did called the Aesthetics Atlas, which is probably the softest thing that I've ever tried to visualize in Tableau. Before we start, my name is Mark Schønwandt. I'm located here in Copenhagen, Denmark. I have a background in IT and economics, and I've been doing BI data consultancy for the past 11, 12 years. 10 of those with Tableau. 10 years ago, I was on a Tableau course hosted and ran by you, Thor, and you introduced me to the world of Tableau. So thank you for that. I started to do obviously a lot more Tableau after this. I became a certified Tableau trainer. Traveled around Europe and did tons of Tableau training. And today I work as an independent data consultant, helping people use their data in the best possible ways. I always like these types of events because you get to meet a lot of people. It's a little bit different when it's online, but you quickly find out that people have very different ways into sitting in front of the screen or being at that event. It's not because everyone studied computer science or something like this. I can share that my way into data started many years ago when I was a kid, sitting on the back seat with my sister in the car with my parents, driving south, primarily to France or Germany or somewhere on our summer or winter holidays. And my sister and I, sitting on the back seat, we were handed this printout of an Excel sheet with basically the itinerary that my dear father, in the form of Chevy Chase, had printed out, with tons of checkpoints along the way. And it was my sister's and I job to sit there with pen and paper and calculate. So the expected arrival time was at 3 o'clock. What time is it now? How many kilometers did we expect to drive? How many have we driven now? Any remarks? And all of this maybe it was to make us be a little bit more quiet on the back seat, but also to ensure that next year's holiday would be a little bit more smooth, and a little bit more smooth for year after and the year after again. It's one of those things you figure out once you are not a child anymore, that this is not a regular family thing to do on holidays. But you should think that I would have been running away from data for my entire life. But I think it took the right turn of events. This is the latest one. Neither my sister and I are on the backseat anymore, but my dear mother is still filling out these Excel sheets. But she has an iPad now that will do all the magic for her. So it's not really the same, right? But that was my way into the world of data originally. But today I'm going to talk about soft values and hard values, soft data and hard data, and what the challenges is with soft values in a visualization context. Then I'm going to jump down the rabbit hole with you and present a case of struggling to understand a world of soft data, how I used a network graph to make more sense of it before bringing it into Tableau to get this overall picture and a fantastic overview that we know we can build in Tableau that lets us explore data sets in very great ways. I'll show you the output, and maybe if we have time, we'll talk about some new approaches on how this could have been done. So that's a plan for now. But first, soft values versus hard values. You probably already have an idea of what I mean. So I'll just quickly say from my perspective, when I say soft values, I mean those things that are more descriptive, that add some nuances or context to the quantitative side of things, which is more precise and measurable. That's probably what we work with most of the time, the quantitative side, in what we do, whether it's finance or counting how many employees we have in our company, etc., etc. Soft values are most likely human-centered. It's based on opinions, and it can be captured in text, rich media, pictures, for example, and it's often somewhat primarily qualitative. Whereas again, on the other side, the hard values, these are the facts that we have measured in data and numbers and metrics, the harder side of things. On the soft value side, we have something that's more interpretive, so again, a little bit softer and more context driven. If I'm looking at a review from a restaurant and it says, great, well, that's great. If it's it's good enough. If it's for a pizza joint for an odd weekday, but if it's for a Michelin restaurant, then great, maybe not. So it really depends on the context. Again, whereas the hard values, that's something that is exact, that's something that is universally understandable. And looking at soft values and hard values, a common thing that can be said, the hard values tend to have more agreed upon scales. It's something that we can all more or less agree on, that $10 is $10, 1 hour is 1 hour. It's something that we can measure, and we agree on these measuring sticks and units. Whereas it's a little bit different on the softer side of things. Either there are no scales at all, or they're fuzzy at best. So what do we do with this? How can we visualize these soft values that we, for now, don't really work that much with? We tend to look on the harder side, right? When you look back, when you think about your own work as well, we are surrounded by a lot of soft data, but we don't really use it that much. So the challenge is that it's unmeasurable, like I mentioned before. That means we need to quantify it somehow and find a quantifying mechanism to make it measurable. So if we have a lot of text customer reviews on one side here, the product is great, but I found the setup process to be confusing. We somehow want to quantify this and make it measurable. So for example, this is an after the fact quantifying mechanism, push it through some sentiment analysis to get out scores that we can actually plot somehow in Tableau. Again, this is an after the fact. Maybe if we're smart, we can use a Likert scale as a before the fact, so we guide people into this scale. I guess we know the numbers 0 to 10, all of us, but it's still not perfect science. Maybe an 8 for me is a 4 for you, Tor, right? We don't really know for certain that 8 is 8, but we're getting closer to a shared unit or a shared scale that we can use. Another quantifying mechanism that we're going to talk about today is when we need to figure out relatedness and closeness of objects, how much something resembles each other and how related they are. Then we can use these sorts of network diagrams or network graphs that we're going to talk about in just a bit. Before we do that, and I'll jump into the project with the aesthetics atlas, I just want to share with you a case that I had with a client a few years ago, which was exactly about this. So their goal, they needed to understand what was driving their ratings. The data foundation, it was not Elgiganten, so I picked a similar company. I think they're called Elkjøp in Norway and Sweden. And I tried to look up the Finnish word, but I really couldn't pronounce it, so I just left that out. But the data foundation here, 131,000 reviews. That is great, but we can never expect somebody to look through all of this and find the topics of what is driving this 3.4 scale. So what we did was to go out and find an appropriate quantifying mechanism that could help us solve our goal on the left side here. We found this machine learning algorithm, the latent Dirichlet allocation, which is basically a fancy machine learning talk for give me the probability of a topic. So with 98% probability, the reviews we looked at before was about delivery or customer service. That's what this is doing. Interesting and maybe important note here is actually the word latent, because it describes what we're doing here, right? So the definition of latent is something that is existing but not yet developed or manifested yet. It's hidden and or concealed, and this is what we want to unhide. Basically, doing this, we want to take all of this unmeasurable data and turn it into something that we can see and understand and measure. So in our case, it ended up in a Tableau dashboard where all of these topics were scattered out and plotted out. And you could see that the topic of delivery, it received 1 star on average based on those 4,200 reviews out of those 131,000 that we have down here, etc., etc. So again, we came from something soft, something not really easily measurable, and turn it into something measurable. All right. So now I want to talk about this small project that I did probably around 2 years ago, which is probably the softest data that I ever had to try to visualize in Tableau. When I work, I tend to listen to music, but it cannot be something that I really need to pay too much attention to. Otherwise, I cannot really concentrate on what I'm doing. And a few years ago, I stumbled upon this YouTube channel here. Maybe some of you know it. It's been playing non-stop for the past, 2.5 years without breaks on YouTube. It's called the Lo-Fi Hip Hop Radio, which is just very chilled out, relaxed music, nothing too big, nothing really to pay attention to, just nice beats playing in the background. That does something for me. And I listened to this music for quite a while, and it evoked some sort of really comfortable, nice, sensational feelings inside that I couldn't really describe, but I just kept on coming back to this because it did something good to me while I was working. Then someday I thought, okay, I need to figure out what is this thing, because I got too curious about this lo-fi thing. Of course, the first thing that I did was to Google it, and it took me to this fantastic website called the Aesthetics Wiki. So basically, the Aesthetics Wiki is, Wikipedia. It's a collection of a lot of different pages that explain what different aesthetics are. So in my case here, I could go in and learn that lo-fi, it's a musical genre, and it's an aesthetic that uses these muted, mundane tones and mundane imagery to evoke a feeling of calm and nostalgia. And that was exactly those feelings that I had. And just knowing that there was actually a language for all of this got me super excited. So it's kind of a new world opening up for me. And of course, I got more curious. I started scrolling around this page. And as I got further down, I could see, there are related aesthetics down here. Okay, maybe there's more. That is something that I need to dive into. If lo-fi can give me this sensation, what about Y2K futurism? Great. Next page, Y2K futurism. Okay, this is about that sensation we had, all of us, if you recall that, around the millennium, when the new millennium was about to start. It's all this blue, very futuristic, robotic thing that kind of dominated how everything looked back then, with the Matrix and robots and electricity. This led me to another page, Future Aero, that Windows Vista theme. Again, if some of you remember that kind of look and feel, how that made you feel when you used your computer. And yes, suddenly I was just falling into this huge rabbit hole, right? Because there are thousands of these pages. So I told myself, stop. This is not the right way to approach this. I know a better way. So I took a step back and I said, okay, I need to build a better overview of this, because I want to know what's related. I want to know how wide is this new world of aesthetics, and where on this atlas is lo-fi that I start out related to all of these other aesthetics that are next to it. So that's the challenge that I set up for myself. The goal, to get an overview of this aesthetics landscape. And it should allow me, my Tableau dashboard, to explore and discover both new and already known aesthetics and genres that evoke some feelings for me. Of course, without bricks, we cannot build anything. So what was my data set? Basically, I scraped the entire wiki and that little section about related aesthetics, and I created a very simple data set, a source and a target. So a page, it has some related aesthetics. So my data set was, of course, more than 3 rows. It was very, very long. How everything relates to everything. My quantifying mechanism, I knew that I wanted to understand relationships between these. And I know that network charts are a really good way to do this. There's a free tool, open source tool called Gephi that has a range of different of these layout algorithms that you can use to plot this out. And this is basically what I did. But I knew that I didn't really want to do all of it in Gephi. It has some limitations. I wanted to push it to Tableau later. But basically, what this allowed me to do was to take all of those pages that I had scraped from the wiki, put it through my algorithm here, and it will basically plot them on this little map down here, this overview. So each node, each round circle, that's a page, and the closer two nodes are to each other, the more related they are. So a light blue out here in the right corner is, of course, it has many similar collections to the one close to it, whereas it has nothing in common or very, very little in common with something on the far end of it. And this is what I want to do. I want to figure out where does lo-fi and that vibe exist in here. Maybe that's something I can get inspired by over here on the other side as well. As I mentioned, Gephi is great for doing these charts and for giving me a lot of nice statistics about all of this. But for visualizing and doing the exploratory analysis, that is something that I rather want to do in Tableau. So I had these two outputs. I knew basically the X and Y's of all of those nodes, all of those pages. Gephi had given me some clusters, basically some groups in here. And also the sizes, that's how many pages link to this. So are they more popular? If they are, I can actually size them based on this. And this is my Tableau dashboard. I'm going to go more into it in a bit, not just screenshots. To begin with, it looks completely chaotic, and that's okay, because it has allowed me, I've allowed myself to be able to search through this in different ways. All of those clusters that you saw before on the former slide, they are listed down here. I looked through them. I got some help, of course, by a good friend ChatGPT back then to give me some good names for this. So, for example, if we go to one side of the chart over here on the left side, we have what's called the enchanted realm. So this is more like a soft fairy tale summer kind of vibe, very non-dangerous side. So all of those aesthetics that fall into this place would end up over here. And I think it's time to jump into Tableau and have a look at it, see how it's built, and also maybe to navigate around a little bit. So this is the dashboard in Tableau in full screen. Let me try to click around here. Up top, we can try to highlight and go in here and search for our good friend from before where it all started, lo-fi. Okay, I can see it's positioned down here in the lower right corner. If I go in and click on this, I can see all of these related pages. So that list you saw before, all of those pages, they are highlighted in my chart now. And I can see kind of how they spread out across the entire pane. On the right side, I've added this little web page in here. So of course, instead of having to go to the website to search up about and read up upon these aesthetics, I could have it right in Tableau. Very convenient way for me to figure out, okay, from lo-fi, I can go to this Y2K thing that I saw before, and then slowly start to click around and explore it in this way without losing the overview of where I am in the world of aesthetics. Again, I mentioned before that I had created some clusters down here, where on the left side, we have these more softer values, very human-based, I can say. On the right side, we have something that's labeled as a futuristic fusion. So this is more, let's say, non-human technology-focused colder things. So like Rave, Cyberdelic. What else do we have? This Y2K, abstract tech. So all of those colder, more mechanic feelings or feels and vibes are on this side. So this is basically a very simple chart. It's basically just a scatter plot of dots that I've generated in my Giphy. Maybe what's interesting for all of you Tableau people that are sitting in here is how I used one of these new features to control visibility that we have in here. So when I go in and click on enchanted reels in here, basically that red part you can see is highlighted in the background, right? That's not something, unfortunately yet, something that's dynamic that Tableau just magically generates for me. In this case, it's actually just a picture that I have in here that I sketched out before. I can drag this picture around here, and it's either shown or hidden whenever I select the name down here. So we have a parameter action that picks up the name when I click this here. They'll say either show or hide this picture. So really happy that Tableau added this in the somewhat later versions of the tool. So this is definitely one of the softest and one of the funnest things that I've ever tried to visualize, because it's not just a classic, here's another financial report. And I really encourage everyone to try to do something similar once in a while, because you are really challenged to working with your data in different ways. And I think that it makes you even better when it comes to working again back in those financial data, because you learn a new perspective of working with data. And if you are like me, and I assume you are somewhat, because you're also in this this great Tableau user group setup, then you're also curious to know more about how to work with this tool. All right. Before we only have 30 seconds left or something like that. So just as a wrap up, we went through the soft values versus hard values, the quantifying mechanism I used using these network charts to gather out all the data, use Tableau to what it's best for, exploring new data sets. And we had a look at the output. If there's something that I wanted to do differently today, it's probably, right now my data set relies on all of those links that you saw. Somebody manually went in and said, oh, Lo-Fi is connected to Y2K, or I believe that there's a connection between these two. So it's a little bit fragile in that way. With tools such as Neo4j graphs, you can actually have them read through all these pages and themselves find all of the links in the text, what's in there as well. So that would be maybe an even stronger chart, more true chart that you can build using such an approach. And of course, since I built this roughly 2 years ago, the large language model world has exploded. So I think it's time to do a revamp of this soon. But that's all for me. Thank you so much, and back to you, Tor and crew.
Thank you, Mark. Is there any questions, either from us in Norway? Betsy is asking, is it on, I guess it's on Tableau Public, because I saw there was a Tableau Public link up there.
Yes.
So you can put it into the chat afterwards, if you like, Mark, so people can have access to it. Någon spørsmål? Norwegians are really shy, so they give them a few more beers and there might be some more questions. Thank you, Mark. I also urge you to check out his Tableau Public profile, because there's a really cool visualizations of a map where you can see from multiple cities how far you can go outside of multiple cities in 10 minutes, 30 minutes, up to, was it 90 minutes or something? Yeah. So I urge you to check that one as well. Tack, Mark. Then we're switching to Tampere and Finland. Can we have the votes from the Finnish jury, please?
Yes, here we are. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Excellent. So wait a minute. I will share my screen.
I'm not sure if you're in Tampere with the other guys, right? So they might have some sound on there. If they just, it sounds like there was some echo. So just make sure that there's no no feedback because they can hear you, I guess, next to where you are.
So, are we set up correctly?
Yeah, I can see your screen, and you can also click on that hide button down below there where it says sharing on your screen, Tero. You can hide that sharing window only. No, it's just me who can see that.
No, yeah.
And infinite. This is how it is in Finland, right? Anybody been to Finland? You go to the sauna and then get some beers and then eventually.
Tänne tilaan.
Yeah, we could see your PowerPoint. There was just this dialog box down there that you could get rid of.
On. So you can still hear me, right?
Yes, but we can see a bit too much.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, we are kind of setting up. Oh, now I opened Tableau desktop. I actually didn't want to do that, so let's close that one. Yeah, no file recoveries this time. Thank you. So I think we are set up everywhere here in Tampere and also in the online location.
Good luck. Thank you.
Yes, excellent. Thank you. So hello Tampere and hello all the other cities and countries there. So my topic, I can already kind of say to you that I won't have so much fancy visualizations in my presentation. I will have a couple of visualizations, but those are basically text tables, so nothing too fancy this time. Because the topic is multi-factor relationship data models, which is kind of the new modeling capabilities released this summer. And well, my name is Tero Honko, as you can see, and I am working as a senior data consultant in a company called Solita. And I've been working in business intelligence domain about 20 years, and I have published my first Tableau public visualization in 2015. So about 10 years experience with Tableau. And kind of this is the agenda for me. So kind of where did this multi-fact data model thing came for? What existed before that? What it actually is and what it can be used for. And well, my opinion kind of or review that how it actually works from the modeling perspective, but also from the analytics perspective. So how it is use multi-fact model when doing visualization and analytics. And then I try to share some kind of key issues that I have found that is relates to this multi-fact model thing, and then also share some key takeaways, what I have learned or figured out myself. One thing is that I would have hoped that I would have more time to actually use and test it. I haven't had so much time that I would like to have, but well, I will still try to share my kind of opinions and first initial findings about this. So let's go forward. We don't have too much kind of time to waste. So where did it come from? In the past, Tableau have always had this physical layer when doing models. So you have been able to define physical tables and joins, unions between those. And Tableau have always combined the data and kind of formulated data set with this in this physical layer. And because Tableau have always kind of executed all the joins, when you only had this physical layer, you couldn't build so reusable data models because you just had to use the tables that you actually need, because when it joined the table, it kind of caused duplication in some of the tables, and then there was data blending, so you could combine these kind of a multiple data sources together. Then in 2020.2, Tableau released a logical layer and these noodle relationships that could be used to actually relate data from different logical objects. And I was kind of very happy when this came, because that gave power to actually reuse these data sources a lot more. Because Tableau, when we build visualizations, Tableau will only query those logical objects that are actually needed for the visualization. And also when, for example, when extracting data, kind of Tableau kept this data of these different logical objects separate and kind of kept the granularity of different logical objects. So already this logical layer, well, in my opinion, it was very good feature. Then it was, I think it was Tableau conference 2020, when Tableau kind of published that they are working with this. At that time, it was called shared dimensions capability. And then it was finally released this year. And I guess it was called multi-fact model support or something like that. And sometimes still shared dimensions, etc. And also we had this more food, because we had these meatballs here in the modeling user interface that was used to actually create these relationships. And now, already now we know that there will be kind of composable data sources coming in the future. That means that you can combine data from different data sources. So you can kind of, again, more flexibility from this data modeling point of view. So this is kind of the history and where we are now. But then let's go that, okay, what is these multi-fact data models? Well, as the name suggests, it allows you to model and include multiple fact tables in one data source and have shared dimensions between those fact tables. And this is very nice, because previously, if you wanted to combine multiple facts in one model, you had to do some kind of combine these multiple facts in actual physical one fact table, or you could model some kind of a limited single dimension kind of relationship between facts, but it was kind of a very restricted how you could use that. So in that sense, this is very nice that you can now actually have multiple fact tables and shared dimensions between those. And what it kind of enables is more complex analytical use cases. So of course, combining data from those different fact tables, creating calculations based on different fields in those fact tables, or for example, identifying dimension values that have some events in one fact but are lacking events in some other fact. So that is kind of one more complex use case. And also it will kind of provide more capabilities how we can define filter scopes, because in the history, when we didn't have these multi-fact models and you used filter in visualization, it automatically kind of filtered every single logical object what you have in the data source, and you couldn't change that kind of behavior. But now with multi-fact models, you can kind of have a bit different kind of filtering scopes in the data source what you are having. And of course, when you combine all these things, this will enable kind of building more comprehensive kind of enterprise-wide data models, and also boost model reusability. At least those were my kind of initial thoughts, what this could provide. But now when I have a bit tried things with this model, I have kind of a bit lowered my own expectations, kind of how wide enterprise-wide models you can actually or could build with this functionality, at least at this point. But let's see what the future brings. And from Tableau's point of view, I think this will provide them kind of a path or capability to release more data modeling related features and capabilities in the future, kind of releasing this particular feature. But then how it actually works from the data modeling perspective. The user interface, or the modeling user interface, have changed a bit. So now you have these kind of fact tables, or actually base tables, on the left-hand side, and the shared dimension tables on the right-hand side. And you can have these multiple base tables here, like the capability or the feature name suggests. And then you can have shared dimensions, or also, of course, non-shared dimensions also at the moment. And what's good to notice is that these objects, these are still kind of these logical objects as before, and those logical objects can be defined, or will be defined using these physical layer tables and joins, just like before. So in that sense, those kind of physical layer things and logical layer things haven't changed. There is just new capability of modeling multiple fact or multiple base tables here. And at least how I have understood this is that Tableau will query, if you build visualization using multiple different kind of base table paths, Tableau will query those kind of separately, those base table paths, and then combine the results at the visualization level of detail. That is how it's kind of works, not too technically, but in a bit more detailed way. And at least for me, it was first when seeing these multi-fact models with a lot of relationships going here and there, it was kind of a bit frightening to see that, okay, and understand that what does it actually mean and what is related to what. And for me, it was easier to think about this one complex data source as kind of multiple submodels. So to kind of recognize that what are the actual single base table paths what this data source have. And you can actually use these new modeling capabilities to collapse these paths and kind of view those one at a time. So it's much more easier to try to understand what it actually contains. And well, here are also some other kind of new features related to the actual modeling. So this path highlighting, you can highlight the paths from base table to dimension, or from dimension table to other dimension tables and base tables. So highlight what kind of paths and relationships different tables are having. Then you can collapse these paths and also highlight relationships. And in my opinion, kind of this modeling is technically rather straightforward and easy, and where the complexity and kind of the harder to understand things are actually in the analytics perspective. So how will this behave when using in visualizations? And here I have my beautiful table, text table, very nice. So what will happen when you are using this kind of multi-fact data model in visualization? If your visualization is kind of taking fields from base tables and shared dimensions, things stay rather simple at that point, because here I have date dimension, shared product dimension. I have sales quantity, inventory quantity, and a calculated field here. And at this point, this sales quantity base table and inventory quantity information are quite nicely in the same visualization. But actually, we can notice one little problem here. We have this null date, and that is a problem in the data actually, because it should be shared dimension, and if it's defined as a shared dimension, then it should contain all the kind of possible values what all the different base tables are containing. But now in this my example data, this this calendar or date dimension is missing some of the inventory dates. So in that sense, even though I have shared the dimension in my model, the data itself is not containing everything what it should be, and then we have some problems. But actually, well, this problem could be quite easily corrected, just creating more data in the date table. But then there are some other problems too, because now the sales figures what I have are on the day level, and the inventory figures what I have are on the month level, and they are kind of related to different fields in the date dimension. And because the inventory is on a higher level, and now my visualization have dates, Tableau will kind of duplicate these monthly inventory figures on, well, these are January inventory here, and Tableau will duplicate those for, well, all the January dates what I will have here in the visualization. And, well, how it works, and Tableau will try to give you some kind of these data stitching hints that how it is combining information, but actually it didn't say anything about this, that these are on different levels. And for the end user, it can be very hard to actually know that, okay, well, what does it mean now? I have these kind of figures. And even for me, it was, well, I have created this visualization, and I know the model, so I can understand after thinking a while that what's happening here, but I can believe that the end user, it will be much more complicated. Then another issue when we bring a dimension that only relates to another base table, but not the other one. So I have actually brought here customer dimension information that relates to sales quantity or sales information, but not inventory. But still, actually, in my visualization, it looks like the customer is somehow mapped to the quantity amount 3 for some reason in this visualization. In this case, this data stitching hint is telling me, though, that quantity, this measure can't be broken down by unrelated dimensions, customer. So it kind of tells me that it cannot be broken down by customer, but still the visualization itself is showing me the data. And I would assume that the end user will be rather confused at this point, that what does it mean? I have inventory value 3 for this customer EE. Nice. But well, of course, me as a report developer then have to take this account somehow and try to avoid this kind of situation. And if I try to build some kind of a big enterprise data models, I think this will be a very hard thing to do or trying to achieve as a report developer. Then what will be even more complicated than this, what we already have, in my opinion, is the kind of filtering scope when we start filtering these visualizations. Because filter will be kind of applied when to certain field if the filtering field and the other field are related to each other. I know that it kind of sounds very straightforward and simple, but for me, at least, I found it rather difficult to understand that, okay, when do two fields actually relate and when they don't relate to each other? So, and I have one case here visualized that, okay, if I create a filter from this products object or table, then of course, well, it will filter these subcategories and categories because they are kind of downstream dimensions. But actually, if I filter by product and then I bring data from customer or supplier to the visualization, it will also filter those. And I was just like, why? And the only reason why what I have kind of figured out is that these products and supplier, they have a kind of a unique base table path. And for some reason, it is filtering suppliers via this inventory base table path. And also it is filtering customers via this unique sales-based path to customers. But it won't filter dates or parts. Well, for parts, there isn't any actual relationship, so that's kind of easy to understand. But it won't also filter dates, and I guess that's because here are kind of many possibilities, many base table paths that could be used. And now, because in my visualization I haven't used any of those, it doesn't kind of select anything because there are ambiguous possibilities. But immediately, if I pick something, for example, from the marketing base table to the visualization, then it will also filter the dates when I have created this filter from the product table. So this is how easy it is. But it will, another case, I have a couple of minutes still left. If I create the filter from the field that is located in the base table. So in this case, for example, here in the inventory table, and I create a filter from that. That is a bit more easier to understand, at least for me, because that will filter all the kind of downstream tables from downstream dimensional tables from that base table path, and it won't filter any other kind of a base table or base table path. So this is kind of a more narrowed to this single path if we use the filter in this base table. And then if we add to that dimension field, for example, from the marketing base table, it will kind of open up the dates to show also those dates, for example, where you don't have inventory, but you have some marketing events. It will kind of start showing those dates at that point. So it's not kind of it will show the marketing information and related dates when necessary, even though if you have some inventory filter here. So I think it's a bit easier to understand, but still a bit complex thing, at least for not playing with this so much at this point. So these are kind of the key issues that I have found. And first thing is kind of this data stitching logic and filter relationships. Those can be very hard to understand when visualizing data. And I would say that complex or too complex multifact models might not be very suitable for some self-service users who don't necessarily have technical skills, because I think they might be very confused at some point. And in my opinion, also these data stitching hints need to be improved somehow, that it would be easier to notice that how is this relationship between some fields actually created and used. And I will need to do some further investigation also at how to implement some calculation logic to break down figures from those dimensions or base tables that aren't related. For example, that month, I would like to create something, okay, I would like to break down this monthly inventory to day level or something like that. I haven't yet paid attention to this, how it's done, but perhaps in the future. And then I'm almost out of time already, and most likely are, but some key takeaways. So in the modeling part is easy and straightforward, but kind of achieving correct results in the visualization is another case. Then when you start building these kind of models, pay more attention to designing and modeling the dimensions, because now they are in a key role. You most likely need much more dimensions than before, like calendar tables and whatever master data things you will have in your use case, like customer, product, geographical areas, etc., accounts, whatever. And make sure that those shared dimensions are really shared, kind of they have the data what these base tables require. And also consider labeling or documenting somehow that how those shared dimensions are actually, what are shared dimensions and what are not shared dimensions. So when you are actually drag and dropping fields, the report author would already know that, okay, this is shared dimension and this is not shared dimension, etc. And well, start small and model first the most important base tables and dimensions, then test how it works. And can you achieve the results what you are looking for? And only if it looks good, then kind of continue and iterate and go further. And remember to publish those data sources to server or cloud. Don't keep those hidden in the workbooks. Yes, thank you.
Thank you, Tero. I guess this leaves the most questions of all presentations because this is really technical. If you have any questions, yeah, there's a question.
Yeah, I was wondering, desktop grep. How does it differ from the Tableau prep?
From Tableau Prep?
Yes.
Yeah. You want to answer that, Tero? Did you?
Yeah, I can try to shortly answer that. Yeah, the Tableau prep, I think, can be used to do some data preparation when you have very different kind of data from different sources. And this kind of multi-fact capability is more like when you need to define what is the actual data model, what will be used when creating visualizations. I'm not sure if that kind of answers the question correctly, but that is at least my opinion about this topic.
Yeah, because you can't build those same type of models in the same visual aspect in Prep as you do in desktop. The desktop has one benefit that Prep has one that desktop doesn't have yet, which is where you can combine published data sources. You can join those in Prep, but you can't do that in desktop yet, but it's coming.
Yeah, that's true.
Thank you, Tero. Then we are moving far north and west to Iceland, to Sverrir.
There's one question.
Yes, thank you, Tore.
Yeah, there was a question in the chat to you, Tero, if you consider field naming so that the different granulations should be visible. Yeah, that was one question. Yeah, there is multiple questions in there. So if you go, Tero, now when Sverrir is starting, could you just answer out those questions in the chat? That would be very helpful.
Yeah, I try to read these questions also here.
And you can just answer them.
Most likely I won't be kind of fixing old models or kind of transforming old models to this, only if there is some actual use case doing that.
Yeah, you don't do it just because you can, right? It needs to be a use case. There is a couple of other questions as well. So if you just use the chat and just answer them in writing, so that we can continue over to Sverrir. And I also asked our Swedish friend if she would like to go before Norway, so that I get the least amount of time, so we can cut time in the end. I love to talk, but we can keep it short. So over to you.
Well, I kind of can't tell you too much about the performance topic yet, because I haven't used this in a use cases that would actually have so much data that we would kind of hit these kind of performance issues. So don't have anything to share about this performance topic yet, unfortunately.
Okay, thank you. And if there's any other questions, Tero, could you just please answer them in writing in the chat so we can move over to
yes,
Iceland?
thank you.
Thanks. Then you are ready, Sverrir, you can share your screen.
Yes, so greetings from Iceland.
Likewise, I can't speak Icelandic, so I'm just going to say hi.
Let me see if I can find my screen here. Are we good to go? Perfect. All right. So first of all, thank you, Tore and Alina, for hosting this Nordic TUG. It's a pleasure to be here joining from Iceland. I'm going to be talking about how Tableau helped Landsbankinn optimize its customer engagement in very volatile times. But to start with, let me introduce myself. My name is Sverrir Edvald. I have an educational background in engineering and finance, and I've been working at Landsbankinn since 2023. Landsbankinn is the biggest bank in Iceland and has over 800 people working for the bank, both in the main headquarters in Reykjavik and in branches all over the country. I work as a business intelligence specialist in the informational intelligence division, and one of the most important tools that we use is Tableau. But before I go through the Tableau report that I'm going to present for you, I want to give you a little bit of a background as to why these reports were created in the first place. So if we start by looking at everyone's favorite topic, which is inflation, of course, we can see that if we look at all the Nordics, excluding Iceland, that the inflation spiked post-COVID, but has come down relatively sharply this year. However, if we look at how Iceland compares, the inflation has been much more elevated. It started to climb much sooner. It spiked to around 10%, and it has been pretty hard to get the inflation under control. Why has that been, you might ask? Well, there are many reasons, but some reasons include an influx of tourists, the highest percentage of population growth in the Nordic and OECD countries, strong GDP and wage growth, as well as property price appreciation. We also had a terrible event unique to Iceland. About a year ago, a volcanic eruption was near the town of Grindavik, and this was a time of extreme uncertainty. A big part of the houses were destroyed by earthquakes, and some even by lava. The town of Grindavik, which hosted around 1% of the population, was evacuated. Let me see. Yep. And 1% of the Icelandic population needed housing immediately as a result. So what do central banks do when they're faced with inflation? Well, they raise interest rate. And if we look at the central bank interest rate in the Nordics, excluding Iceland, we can see that they went to around a maximum of 4.5% and are now at a downward trajectory. However, if we look at how Iceland compares, the interest rate went down to historical lows during COVID, but after COVID, it was raised at a very fast pace to a peak of over 9%. And it has been at that rate for over a year. And the rates have only recently started to come down. And this is where we get to the reason why we built the Tableau report. So during COVID and the historically low interest rate, mortgages became very popular. And a big part of these mortgages were taken with a 3-year fixed rate. So this meant that the fixed interest rate was due to expire between 2024 and 2025, during a time where the interest rate has been at one of the highest levels they have ever been. And in the case of Landsbankinn, this meant that in 2024, around 100 billion Icelandic kronas worth of mortgages have had their rates changed from an average of 4.5% to 10.5%. And in 2025, another 100 billion kronas will be repriced as well. So in 2023, as the central bank was raising its interest rate, and we were getting closer to these loans having to be repriced, we saw that we needed to have a good overview and insight into the future. And this is where Tableau comes in. So the first dashboard we built was published in 2023 and was meant to get a scope of the situation. On the x-axis, you can see the date at which the fixed rate interest rate will expire, and then the interest rate will go to whatever the current variable rate will be at that time. In the report, we can switch from different time periods, from the exact day this will happen, to months, quarters, or years. On the y-axis, we can switch between both the number and the balance of loans that will go through the change from fixed rate to variable rate. The gray line, which you can see here, has the right axis, and it shows us the average fixed rate for each of the loans at each point in time. We can also see the exact number by hovering over the bar, and then the tooltip will appear. For example, in this picture, we can see that now in November of this year, there's around 12.2 billion worth of mortgages that are going through the repricing, and they have an average interest rate of 4.4. We can split the number into locations. And for example, we can see here that the capital region has around 8.6 billion of these 12 billion. We can also split the number into age groups. And by doing that, we get insight into how different demographics are affected. So this report gave us a great overview of this situation, what was ahead, and what we could, of course, see that there was a substantial amount of loans that was going through this change from 2024 to 2025. It also gave us insight into which locations and age groups were affected the most. But we wanted to see if we could estimate the potential impact on our customers. And that's why we created the second report. So we didn't know in 2023 what the variable rate would be in 2024 or in 2025 for that matter, but we could devise some kind of an estimation. And one simple way of estimating the potential future impact is to say, okay, what if the loans were to go from fixed rate to variable rate today? So we added the current variable interest rate at Landsbanken to the right y-axis. And by doing that, we could calculate the difference between the average fixed rate at each time and the current variable rate and what that would mean for the monthly payments. Then, as you get closer in time to these loans having to be repriced, that estimation becomes more accurate. We color-coded the bars in accordance with the difference in the average fixed rate and the current variable rate at each time. We then added a lot more detail in the tooltip. We added useful insights like the number and balance of loans, number of properties mortgaged, the average balance of loans per property, the current value of the property, and the mortgage ratio. And because we added the current variable rate, we could also calculate the potential increase in interest and the potential increase in monthly payments. Then, when we filter specific bars, we can see the distribution of the loans in the scatter plot below based on the potential increase in payments versus the length of the loan and the mortgage ratio. And we can see here if there are any trends, patterns between different demographics, as well as if there are any outliers. So this gave us great insight into the potential impact this would have on our customers and how it would affect different demographics. But as customers were going through the change, we wanted to see more information about the communication and the decision around that process. And that is why we created the third and final dashboard. We decided to measure a couple of key factors. And when we look at loans that change from fixed rate to variable rate from the beginning of 2023, we can see that around half of our customers did not seek out mortgage counsel. The other half did. And of that other half, it was split just about 50-50 between seeking out counsel before the interest rate expired and after the interest rate expired. And we can see here as well that during the first big spike in the number of loans that were going through the repricing, it coincides with an increased volume in the mortgage counsel. We can also see that 43% of the loans still exist today, which means that they change from a fixed rate to variable rate without any changes being made. 57% of the loans do not exist, which tells us that in most cases, the loans have been refinanced into a new loan. So with all the information from these three dashboards we created in 2023, we could get really valuable insight, which helped us in planning for the time period that was coming. Because of these insights, a couple of key decisions were made. We decided to reach out to all of our customers through our various channels in a timely manner. Each customer then got a call and the option to request an appointment for a mortgage counsel. And this helped distribute the pressure on advisors and reduce the foreseen spikes in advisory requests. A project which revolved around allowing customers to refinance through our mobile app was also fast-tracked. And now we see that applications start in the web or in the app in most cases. And a considerable amount of refinancing actually goes straight through the application without any need for consulting. And all the applications that go through the web or the app go into a pool in which all the branches around the country can work on if the customer requires some help or some consulting. So by taking these actions, by being proactive in communication, by fast-tracking refinancing in the app, and utilizing the network of branches around the country, we were able to smooth out the foreseen spikes in communication with our advisors over a longer period of time and make the refinancing options much clearer and accessible to our customers. So just to summarize, with the help of these three Tableau dashboards, we established the scope, we visualized what the future would look like, we gained insight into the potential impact on customers, we gained insight into typical communication and decision around these loans, and then took action based on these insights to improve and optimize our customer engagement. So thank you. I hope this was insightful. And if you have any questions, just feel free to ask.
Thank you. Any questions from Norway? No? Norway gives 12 points to Iceland today. Thank you, Sverre.
Thank you.
And then if we are lucky and Sanna did read my email or my message, and if I can find her in here somewhere, from Sweden, see if I can find you. See, Walid is here. He's the leader of the Sweden or Stockholm User Group. And there is Sanna. I'm going to make you a presenter. And hopefully you are, even though on the agenda you were after me, but we're running a bit late. So if you are ready, Sanna, then I'll let you share your screen. I see that Tero has answered a lot of his questions. That's good. So whenever you're ready, Sanna, we are ready for you.
Just a second, I'm trying to share my screen. Just give me a minute.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah, can you all see my screen?
It's an infinitive window. There we go. Now I can see it.
Okay. So hello everyone. Hello from Sweden. Today it started to snow in Stockholm. It's an auspicious day, I feel, for conducting the TUG. And first of all, I would like to thank you everyone who has joined virtually on in person. And uh, today, what I've done, I've kept my topic, since I am the second last speaker in the panel. So I've kept my topic a little crisp and light. I know a lot of you might be hungry and might be thinking of heading out. So just kept that thought under consideration. So before I go ahead and start with my topic, I have kept a fun trivia, so a little fun segment so that the brain gets a little refreshing. So if anybody give me answer of these two questions, they will get a Tableau swag from Tore, I think, if or from me, like if we have any TUG in person. So let's get started on this. So can anyone tell me what's the name of this visualization? It's commonly called as field map, but I'm not looking for that. I'm looking for a technical name for it. Someone asked me this question in an interview and I couldn't answer it, which is why it's there now in the presentation. Anybody? Anyone that you see Tore who has raised their hands? I cannot switch between the screen and the chats.
Yeah, we got a suggestion of a heat map.
No, it does use the heat map technique, but it's not a heat map. It's more rectangular.
It's more of what the data is. Is that's more of the question?
No, what's the name of this visualization that I'm looking for? It's commonly called a spilled map, that you might be knowing, but there is a technical name for it. I will not keep the suspense going on. It's called choropleth map, and the word choropleth is derived from Greek, where choro means region and pleth means quantity. So this kind of map uses color or shades of color to depict data across different geographical regions. I have another one for you. Can you guess the name of this chart? And again, I need your coordination to if anybody raises their hand.
Yeah, there might even be people in Finland, Elina. So if there's somebody in Finland who knows this.
I think I have kept the question a bit hard, but again, so this is called a dendrogram chart. And
yeah, there was one in the chat.
is there a winner?
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Rakesh.
Rakesh, you have got it right. And I'm from India, so when I'm in India, I might give you some Tableau swag over there. So thanks for answering. And this kind of chart uses a hierarchical relationship. Is used to depict hierarchical relationship. One such example is given over here. And another example you can think of is organizational chart, where, for example, you have to see how many reportees are there under one manager and who is reporting to whom. So such kind of network kind of data you can depict through dendrogram. Now I will get over to to give an intro a little bit about me. So my name is Sana, and I am working as a senior data consultant in Capgemini. It's been almost 2.5 years with Capgemini, but overall I carry around 8+ years of experience in data analytics space. And recently I got certified in Tableau as a Tableau desktop specialist. So if anyone has any question on how to prepare for the certification, they can reach out to me after this presentation or in LinkedIn. And aside from that, I do have a Tableau public profile where I build visualization, which I generally choose as topic of my personal interest. And aside that, my hobbies include I love traveling, and so far I've traveled to 14 countries, and Norway is also in my list soon. And aside from that, I love playing cricket and badminton. I do have a cricket team in Stockholm. So that's a little intro about me. Now, getting over to the main deal. So today, I am going to talk about some four essential design element, four essential UI changes, which is going to make your dashboard more user friendly, and it is going to drive more engagement of the users. So these changes are quite simple, but when applied, you will see a difference. It's going to make a huge impact in your visualization. So what are these? So let's start with the first one, which is white space. So this design element, you might have seen that a lot of dashboard developers often overlooks it. But when you add the white space, you gain a lot of uh, clarity and readability into the dashboard. And one of the best examples that you can find where there is an effective use of white space, and you might have gone through it but not have noticed it, is this Google search page. So if you see the Google search page here, this page is almost entirely covered with white space, except you can see there is a search bar which is at the center. Now here, the white space is strategically placed by the Google team. So what they wanted to do is they wanted to make the users focus on the search bar, and through the white space they have given that to the users, or through the attention, they have grabbed the attention of the users through the white space, and now user can see directly at the search bar. So through what white space does is it enhances the focus to the key areas. And if I go back to the presentation, if I have to summarize it up, like, it isn't, white space isn't just an empty space. I would say it's an active design element. It's not something which which is there lying passively in the background. It's an active design element that enhances clarity, focus, and visual flow in the data visualization. And why does it matter? So it reduces the cognitive load. When I say cognitive load, it means that it's a fancy way of saying that when your brain is not able to process the information, then it means there is much of a cognitive load. And if you add white space around your element, then it becomes easy for the brain to grasp the information. You can find an analogy like, let's say you have a book in which all your words are crammed together, then it will be difficult for you to get to know what's there in the book. But if you have space around the word, then you'll grasp the information more easily and in a better way. So one rule for building good visualization would be avoid overcrowding. So let each chart, each data element have some spacing around. And one pro tip that I would give is the 8 pixel rule. Whenever you are placing the visual elements, charts, text, or anything in the dashboard, always have some 8 pixel of spacing between each other. So that's like a thumb rule. I can give it to you. And one of the demonstration that I will show you in the dashboard. So here I am into my Tableau public page. Now you might all have seen this Superstore dashboard. From the eyes, you can find it readable and it's clear. But if you focus more into it, you will find that this map is a bit stretched out, and the bottom two area trend charts looks a little jam-packed. But then cut to adding white space. Now you can see clearly the difference. What I have done. So what I've done is added some spacing around each of these visual elements. So if you see at the map, I have pushed the map to the left hand side and added some spacing around it. Then for the KPI metrics also, I have added some spacing around it. And similar goes for the other charts. So in this way, it is not looking overwhelming to the users. Now people or users can grasp the information step by step. So this is what white space do to your visualization. It helps the users to get the information, to absorb the information incrementally. Now, this is about the first technique that I have for you. Moving on to the next UI technique, which is the font hierarchy. So for the font hierarchy, I just want you to look at the right two images. Now, can you tell me like which one is easier to read? And it's quite simple. Like everyone will say the bottom text is quite easier to read. And this is the power of font hierarchy, because in the bottom text, the title is grabbing the attention of the users. Through the font variation, you get to know that, okay, this piece of information I should be reading first, and the rest the information I should be taking in. With the first image, there is no variation in the font, so you don't know where to start. So same concept is applied in the dashboard. When you establish a font hierarchy in the dashboard, you let the users know that which piece of information they should be reading first, and the flow goes. And how you are going to achieve that is through three ways. First is the size. Size is like when you increase the size of the text, you let the users know that, okay, this piece of information is crucial, or this piece of information they should be looking at first. So for example, when you're building the dashboard, you want the users to see the dashboard header first and the KPI metrics first. So you increase the size of the font. And then another way is through weight. By weight, I mean making the text bolder or lighter. So it's another way to grab users' attention. And another way is through color. There are some cases where in a KPI, you have one KPI which is more important than the others. So in this case, you can highlight that KPI through color. So in this case, you're letting the users know that this KPI is more important than the rest. Now I will demonstrate it in my dashboard. So here, once I have added white space, you can see something is missing here. So all the piece of information just are in the same weight. If you see the text, all are in the same weight and there isn't much font variation. Now cut to adding font variation, you can see a clear, huge difference. Now what I've done is in the KPI metrics, I have enhanced the size of the text and also made it bold. So my reason behind doing this was to make the users look at this piece of information first, and then they go slowly to the map and then the monthly trend. So this is how you can create a visual flow of information and guide the users. So which piece of information you want to show them first, and then so on and so forth. So that's the power of font hierarchy. And that's my second technique for you, which you can establish in your visualization. Now, moving on. The third technique that I have is this is also another UI technique which makes the dashboard users experience a bit better. So defining space. When I say defining space, it's not equivalent to the white space that we spoke about in the first technique. It's more of creating a structure in your visualization. So let me give you an analogy. For example, if you have let's say you have a desk where everything has its own spot. For example, your laptop is at the center, you have your notebooks all at the left side, and your pens are in the pen holder. So here in this case, you will end up working instead of searching for your stuff. But when you have a desk where everything is a chaos, everything is a mess, then you will end up focusing on searching instead of working. So same concept goes for dashboard. So if you have a dashboard where the object are placed randomly on the screen, then it becomes difficult for the users to grasp, to focus on the key areas. They will focus more on deciphering the layout. So organizing the contents in the dashboard is really important for enhancing the readability of the visualization. So when you want to make the information easy to read for the users, then you need to create a structure layout in your dashboard. And how you can achieve it is through separation. Separation, like using when you want to make each of your section distinguishable from each other, then you can use border, you can use a soft background or a dark background. For example, let's say you want to show filter section in separately in the dashboard, so you can use a light or soft background for that, to distinguish that part of the dashboard. And another way in which you can organize your dashboard is alignment. Make sure that all your charts, text, and labels are aligned properly. And one of the ways in which you can do it is to follow grid system that I will show you in the demonstration after this. So let me go back to my dashboard. Here you can see that I have established the font hierarchy. But there isn't a structure here in this visualization. Everything blends together. So like there isn't a separate section for each of these information. So when I add a structure, you can see the difference. What I wanted to see is like, what I wanted to do is to make these, each of these information stand out from each other. So like KPI, if I wanted to separate it out, I just added a darker background here so that it is distinguishable, it stands out here. And then monthly sales. So these two charts were similar in nature. So both of these charts are showing trends, monthly trends. So I clubbed it together through a soft background. And this is already distinguishable through a white background. So here now you have a organized structure in your dashboard. And talking about the alignment, if you see, all these texts are all lined up in one line. And here also KPI, if you see, the profit ratio and all these KPI numbers are lined up in a single line. And how you can check the if the all the alignments are correct, indentations are correct, is by going through this, going onto the dashboard menu and clicking on the show grid option. So when you click on the show grid option, you will have the grid lines at the background, and it will tell you, it will show you the lines, and you can just see like if all these texts are in one line or not. So through these way, this grid system, you can check if your chart titles, text, but wherever you have used are all in same place or not. Now the last technique that I have here is streamlining and simplifying the dashboard. When I say simplifying the dashboard, it's always follow the principle, which is less is more. And how you can establish this less is more principle is by cutting the clutter. So whenever you're building a dashboard, one thing that you should be asking yourself, that the metrics that you are adding into the dashboard, is it usable? Is it going to add value to the target audience? If not, then just take it off. Because sometimes what happens, like we do add KPI in our dashboard, but it is not usable for the target audience. It's just a piece of information, but that doesn't matter to the user. So just make sure that whatever piece of information you're putting into the dashboard, it is intended for the target audience. And it's not only about KPIs, it's also like visual elements. Like sometimes grid lines, you can just take it off or soften it. Sometimes you have many filters that you can hide it, and you can put it in a collapsible menu option. So these ways you can just take off all those visual elements which you think is not required in the dashboard. So this way, first way is to cut the clutter, which through which you can achieve simplify your dashboard. Another way is through limiting the colors. Color is a very important aspect, and it can make or break your dashboard. So when you are choosing colors, make sure it's always for a functional purpose. And a thumb rule for using colors, I think as Chantley already described it in her presentation, is always think about having only two dominant colors in your visualization. Because when you're putting too many colors, it's just overwhelm the users. They will be focused more on the color instead of the information. So have that thing in your mind. And third thing that you should be thinking about when you having colors in your dashboard is accessibility. Make sure that when you're putting colors in your dashboard, it's accessible to all the people, including those who are prone to color blind. And there are tools where you can check if the colors that you have used are colorblind friendly or not. There is like tool called uh, Color Brewer or Cobbliss, which helps you in testing that how this palette will look for to the colorblind people. So these important points you should keep in mind when you are using colors in your dashboard. And the third is the chart selection. This is another important aspect when you are simplifying your dashboard. Make sure that you're choosing the right chart type, and always go for simple and minimalistic design. Don't go for fancy and advanced chart which is not able to communicate the data in a right manner. Go for simple chart. Like whenever I build visualization, I go for bar chart, line chart, and these are enough to communicate the information easily to the users. And you might have seen cases where people are using donut charts to represent more than 6 categories. This is not the right way. And never think about choosing the chart type just because it looks good from the design perspective. Always think from the communication point of view, whether this chart serves the purpose of communicating the data in a better manner or not. So was my fourth technique, and I will lastly show it in the demonstration, what I've done. So once I have established the structure, I went into streamlining, and the changes that I've done is first with the color. Now you can see that I have changed the color palette from orange and blue to the golden and purple. The reason behind is this palette is more accessible to colorblind friendly people. This is also accessible for the orange and blue combination is also has also accessibility to colorblind friendly people, but the problem is it doesn't cater to the maximum audience in that zone, while this combination cater to the maximum audience. And another reason is like this color combination, both these colors are at a high contrast. So I wanted to, and it just looks a little bit overwhelming to the eyes, while has a warmer presence, which is why I changed it to the golden purple combination. And another change, if you see, I have changed this area trend chart to the line chart, because this is better communicating this kind of data instead of the area chart. If you see the profitable and unprofitable orders, it is able to do justice to, it is able to distinguish these two categories very well than what area chart was not doing. If you see, there are cases where we have unprofitable orders, but what area chart is doing, it is submerging that it is just submerging that piece of information that unprofitable orders shade. So area chart, I felt like this is not doing this is not communicating the data in a better manner, so I just changed it to the line chart. So that's what I did to simplify. And another change that I did is like this piece of this area was a bit cluttered felt, and so I pushed it to a collapsible menu. So all the filters, I just pushed it over to the close and open button. So one thumb rule that you can follow to achieve simplicity in dashboard is to go through each of the visual element and see like which one is not adding any values to the dashboard, and which go through each of the charts as well, like from the user's perspective, you try to understand like if you are able to get the data in the right manner, if you are able to understand the data properly or not. So this is my fourth technique. Now going back to my presentation, I would say that you don't have to implement all these technique at once. You can go one by one. You can start with adding white space into your visualization, and you can eventually see like how much of a big impact it makes to your visualization. And it will not only make your dashboard engaging, but when it comes to enhancing focus and clarity and readability of the visualization, it does a big change. So try to implement it one by one, and then you see like the impact that it does into your visualization. Finally, I want to conclude my presentation through a quote, which says that a designer knows he has achieved perfection not when there is nothing left to add, but when there is nothing left to take away. So that's it. And thank you, everyone, and hope you like the presentation.
Thank you. Any questions, comments? Nothing in the chat at the moment. Okay. Then we have 45 minutes left, right, for me? Thank you, Sana. See you in Sweden next time.
Sure.
I'm just going to share my screen and summarize. And I'm going to do this one away. If I manage to do that. F5 du tok fullskjerm på det? Sånn. There. Sånn. And there should be exactly. So quickly go through my presentation, which is the best of everything new this year, 2024.1, 2, and 3. We've already seen some of it. Hi, my name is Tore. I'm a Tableau Jedi, because I could pick my own title when I changed my last job. So since we don't have that much time left, I'm not going to go in and show those in particular, how you do all the things, but Tableau is releasing one version 3 times a year. If you have cloud, it's 3 times a year. If you're on-prem, it's every other. So you don't get the same if you're on-prem as you are on cloud. 2024.1, this workbook, I'm going to publish it on my Tableau public profile so you can see this, but you will see that for each release, Tableau is releasing a whole bunch of stuff. And then you can go all the way down here and look at if there's any particular products, if it's prep or desktop or cloud or server, and then you can click into these. But I put in my kind of highlights of each version. And something that we also realized, or you realize when you start opening up the new versions, there's Tableau are actually adding some small, neat, cool things into the versions that I don't publish. So like not necessarily Easter eggs, but stuff that we love because it makes the life so much easier when you're using Tableau, but they don't necessarily announce, which is a bit interesting. So for those of you who have cloud, in 24.1, Tableau Pulse, that was the new big thing, where you very easily can drag and drop and build these kind of metrics that you can have, and multiple people can build them. You can combine those together, so you can look at multiple of these different KPIs and also get that AI summarizing, saying that if you look at the data over the last 3 weeks, there was an increase in bloody and a decrease in something like this. And like a lot of other things that Tableau adds, when you get this in 24.1, I would like to put these into dashboards. That came in 24.3. So they are evolving this product always. If you are on the cloud, also now you could put your environment on the AWS marketplace, so which is down here. So you're not limited by where you put your stuff, but you also get then 1 terabyte of data storage. So even those big Excel sheets should fit in there, right? There is labels in web authoring. If I'm going to go down here a bit, I can show that quickly in here as well. Meaning, I'm not just going to look at Tableau Bridge because that's a bit limited, right? I'm going to do all products. So those labels, I'm just going to find, as you can see, there was a lot of this new stuff about Pulse, obviously, because there was a new thing and everybody at Tableau were really happy about that. If you go to the latest version now, there's so much stuff about the AI features and the just write something cool and Tableau builds something for you. I didn't find that at the moment, but for Tableau Prep, the identifying duplicate rows, it doesn't show up in here. But in Tableau Prep, if you have multiple data source with multiple rows that are identical, you can just use a built-in feature now to find those multiple rows and then, or duplicate rows, sorry, and get rid of them. Also, Vis navigating for text tables, meaning that for people, and that goes to accessibility, when you have a table, you can just use your keyboard to navigate through. And if you're blind, obviously that's helpful, but then you can also get every data point read out if you have other applications connected to your Tableau setup. So these are my my favorites from .1, from .2. And now we have the AI and the Tableau Pulse. So, Tableau Plus. that's something that you need to, first of all, you need to have cloud. If you have cloud, you also need to pay for Tableau Plus. But then you have this agent, which is the clever one, previously the Einstein from Salesforce, where, for example, if I zoom in a bit in here, in prep or in desktop, you can basically just write, I would like to clean up my data, get rid of duplicates, and join them with something else. And Tableau gives you calculation or a suggestion in desktop or in web. It also builds your visualization for you, and then you can adjust accordingly as well. And no, I'm not afraid that people like us who are data analysts will lose our jobs, because this will also only help us make better, faster visualizations and charts, and then we can build even more. Multi-fact relationships were shown already from Finland, but that's something that's really cool. There's also something called vis extensions, which is both positive and negative, but the idea here is that you can basically drag and drop and build more or less whatever visualization that you haven't been able to do before in Tableau. If you would like to create a Sankey chart before, that demanded a whole bunch of calculations, a whole bunch of prepping with data and so on. Now we can just add an extension and add whatever dimensions and values like this. It's really easy. The danger of all these cool new visualizations is, of course, when it comes to visual best practice. Like Sana said, she uses bar charts. That's like 8 out of 10 times a bar chart, horizontal bar chart. That's the way to go, because everybody understands it. You can sort it. And then people, oh, it's so cool to create a radial chart or a Sankey chart, and nobody understands how to interpret the data. So be a bit careful with those, even though it's visually appealing at least. So those vis extensions, there's a whole bunch of those that are available. I'm going to show a bit more about that later. The individual control formatting, if you have a dashboard with multiple filters, you go in, right click, change fonts, change size, go to the next one, right click, change size, fonts, and you do that for all. Now we can actually decide if you would like to filter format all of them or one at a time. Another trick is if you would like to fix all your filters to be drop down, relevant values, and know all button, for example, you right click change so many times. You can do what I've done at some tip battle sessions before, hack the XML, find replace, really dangerous. I'm going to show you how we now can do that for your entire dashboard. That's not built in Tableau, by the way. That's made by a nice French guy called Tristan La Davis. Custom schedules for Tableau Conductor, so you don't have to follow the schedules that Tableau sets up every weekday at 9. You can have your own schedules if you have prep flows that are on the server. If you would like to do them at 5 minutes past 4 every second Friday, you can build those on your own. Same goes for this incremental extracts. If you have a huge data source, you don't want to necessarily extract everything. You can extract based on different data points, or date points, so that you don't have to update the entire data set to just the newest ones, for example. So those are some of the new ones in 24.2. 24.3 that came not too long ago. I'm always accepting all the cookies. That is, of course, the Tableau Cloud Manager. If you have multiple sites, and as an admin, you can save a lot of time. You can fix and control multiple sites at one time. If you only have one, it doesn't matter. We have the vis extension. I'm going to go into that one afterwards. Something called spatial parameters. So if you're working with data on maps, there's now parameters that can be dynamically updated. So if you have this particular place where you have stores, how many bicycle share rides are within that area, and it's dynamic and it's moving around. So that's pretty cool. If you're using Teams instead of Slack is part of Salesforce, so that's why Tableau and Salesforce is pushing that. But if you're using Microsoft Teams, now we can get Tableau embedded into Teams as well. Display data model for published data sources. How many times haven't you connected in desktop to a published data source and you would like to look at how the joins and the relationships are, and you can't right click or you can't show it. You just have to go to server to do it. Now at least you can look at that data model in desktop. Really helpful. 2 sessions today talked about fonts. Google fonts are now supported for those who love Google fonts, also on the desktop and the cloud and everything. Tableau Cloud is moving to Hyperforce, which is Salesforce's own Hyperforce. Today, the cloud is in Ireland, moving also to Germany, but Hyperforce is in multiple, I think even in Sweden. So if you need to have your data closer to home, wherever you live, not in Sweden, obviously, we don't want our data in Sweden, then Hyperforce will enable that. And I mentioned that already, that the metrics from Tableau Pulse can now be embedded into a dashboard, so you don't have to have 2 separate ways to look at those. 2025.x, we don't know yet, but what Tableau always do, they do share some hints sometimes, but since they just released the last one, there's nothing. But if you go to this webpage, pre-release tableau.com, you can be part of beta testing of every new Tableau product out there. So that's also a way of getting ahead of the crowd. So a couple of really quick, cool features from La Database. He's creating all kinds of cool, or there are 2, creating all kinds of cool visualizations that are obviously crazy enough to don't use them if you don't have to. But this filter manager, upload your workbook, say that all my filters in my entire workbook dashboards should have apply all button, should have single value list, no data sent anywhere, and you don't have to pay me a lot of money to do that manually for hours and hours. So that's a time saver. If you would like to visualize beautiful dashboards in Figma, there's a Figma to Tableau app as well. Just visually create them in Figma, download, import directly to Tableau and connect to your data. So La Database is a great place to be. And then this is taking some time to load, and apparently I'm not signed up, but if you have GPT or OpenAI ChatGPT Plus, Adam Miko has created a lot of helpful GPTs to get answers on Tableau subjects. Put in a dashboard and you will get review on your dashboard. There's a data mock-up GPT that will basically generate random data that you can use as well. And Tableau ideas have moved now to Salesforce. That's the last thing I'm going to show, where we accept all the cookies. So if you would like to have an idea of something that you would like to have in Tableau, go to the new idea exchange, add your own idea or vote on other people's idea. And then in 1 year time, we can talk about all the new features in 2025, and maybe some has come from you guys. Let's see if there was any question. No questions. We are at the agent. Yeah, that's only on cloud. So all the AI stuff that are coming are on cloud. Tableau will support server forever and ever. At least that's what they're saying. It's been there forever, going to be there forever. But obviously, if you would like to, all the new stuff, all the fancy stuff, all the AI stuff, for now, it's just on cloud. At least that's what they're saying. Maybe in the future, there will be potential to have some of it in-house as well, on-prem. So thank you to the 120 plus people who signed up for this event. Thank you to all the speakers. Enjoy your after party in Tampere. And if you don't have anything to do in next week, there is a Data Plus Maps user group, virtual one, that I'm also co-hosting. If you are interested in maps, sign up for that one. And we'll see each other next year, I guess. For those of you in Oslo, we're going to talk when we turn off the camera and see what we're going to do. So we have swag. So if you would have been here in Norway, there would be a lot of swag. Thank you, everybody.
We have some swag here in Finland as well. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you,
somebody
Ture.
is coming over. Thank you, Elena. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice afternoon.
Thank you, Tore. Thank you, everyone. Bye bye.